This module is looking at several key concepts associated with hypothesis testing. In the last video, we noted that a hypothesis test has two potential types of errors, which we very creatively called a type 1 error and a type 2 error. A type 1 error happens when we reject the null, but it's really true. In a type 2 error, we don't reject the null, but it's really false. The type 1 error rate, or the significance level, or the alpha level, is traditionally 5%. But it doesn't have to be. Let's take a look at a couple of examples to illustrate. First example. You are quality control director of a company that manufactures rope used by bungee jumpers. And you claim that you are producing 3,000-pound test bungee line. Now, this does not mean that it is being used by 3,000-pound bungee jumpers. This is a sport that is generally not engaged in by gravitationally gifted individuals with grand pianos strapped to their back. No, remember, that rope needs to support not only your weight, but also the very sudden deceleration as you reach the proverbial end of the line and hopefully stop. But you've been manufacturing this rope for years and years and years. Your manufacturing process is in control. It is consistently producing good bungee rope. And you, running your good quality control program, occasionally sample and test your rope. What are your hypotheses when you do so? Well, your null hypothesis is that the rope is okay. It has been for years, so no effect, nothing special going on. And the alternative is that you've got a problem. Things have changed. The question for you is, in this context, what would a type 1 error be? What would a type 2 error be? Take a minute, think through those. Pause the video here, take a minute. What's a type 1 error? What's a type 2 error? Type 1 error, we wind up not selling good rope. Royal Tasmanian, reject the null if it's true. We reject the null, we think it's not okay. But it really is okay, the null really is true. So we've got good rope, but we threw it in scrappy. Conversely, type 2 error, Royal Tasmanian Defense Force, don't reject if it's false. We don't reject, and so we continue to believe the rope's okay, but the null is false. That rope really is not okay. And so we have ungood rope that we sell. What are the relative costs of these? Well, not selling good rope will cost you a little bit. You've got rope that you can't sell or that you have to sell not as high quality bungee rope, but as lower quality something else rope. Now you've lost out a little bit of whatever value you've created in the manufacturing process. On the flip side, if you sell bad rope, well, chances are that somewhere down the line there's a lot of excitement at the bungee jump place. Now, there is a school of thought in marketing that argues that there is no such thing as bad publicity. And you could use this as an opportunity to start selling extreme bungee jumping rope. Will it or will it not? But realistically, this one's going to get expensive. You're going to have cleanup costs. not to mention a really nasty product liability lawsuit, and probably loss of future sales as well. Type 2 errors here are going to run to some serious money. The dean, by the way, says we are supposed to be introducing business ethics concepts throughout our curriculum. So this is the business ethics moment of the week for stats class. Killing people is bad business. Okay? Given the relative costs of type 1 and type 2 errors in this context, maybe we want to allow more type 1 errors to get the type 2 error rate down, and maybe that traditional 5% is not where we want to be. Another example. You are a military engineer. You have designed automated circuits for an ICBM missile which checks for firing conditions every 3 seconds. The idea being we want to engineer this in such a way that even a sneak attack by the enemy that takes out our command and control structure, the missile still would be able to retaliate. And so the null hypothesis is that everything is okay. But the alternative is that we've got a problem and we need to launch. Once again, take a minute. What are type 1 and type 2 errors in this context? Take a pause for a second here. What are those errors? Well, we make a type 1 error. All we do is start World War III, right? Reject the null if it's true, Royal Tasmanian. We've rejected the null. We think things are not okay. And they really are. Peace and harmony was happening and we launched the missiles. On the flip side, we make a type 2 error. Tasmanian Defense Force. Don't reject if it's false. The null is false. Things are not okay. But we don't notice that, and so we wait 3 seconds for the next automated check. Now, there is a school of thought that argues that the resulting nuclear winter from starting World War III would completely solve any global warming problems that might be out there, and the resulting nuclear winter would do wonders for the cross-country ski industry in Florida. That tends to be a minority view. Ending civilization as we know it is probably a bad idea. Business ethics moment again. Whereas waiting 3 seconds, well, that's not trivial in the context of a nuclear exchange, is on the whole less expensive. Here's a case where type 1 errors are really, really expensive, and we want to get those probabilities down, even if we allow for more type 2 errors. Again, 2 extreme and tongue-in-cheek examples, but they do illustrate the trade-offs at work between these two. So in summary, we've noted 2 types of error. A type 1 error where we reject the null if it's true. A type 2 error we don't reject if it's false. By default, that type 1 error rate, that alpha, that significance level, is 5%. And in general, as one of them increases, the other will decrease.